Hey everyone, thanks for joining us to learn about how to put together a budget for your Downtown Program Fund grant or your Art in the Park grant. You'll notice that these are actually the same budgets used, so it doesn't matter which grant you're applying for, you'll still be able to use this workshop. To find the budget, I highly recommend going into either grant. As you can see, I have the Art in the Parks grant open as well, and going to the related documents. Here you can find a list of all the application questions before you get in there, how to create your downtown program fund budget, and then a template. So if you like to read, the how to create your downtown program fund budget covers the same material as we're going to talk about today, but in a written form. So go ahead and download the budget template, and I have it here already. Before you start, I really encourage you to take a moment, sit back and think about your event. Walk through the footprint. Who's there? Who's a part of the event on the production side? What equipment are you using? What space are you in? And just think about all of those details because you're really going to need that information when you start putting your budget together. So I'm going to encourage you to start with the expenses because that's a little easier to come up with usually for folks. You'll also see in this budget template that this is the blank template. We even have a blank budget in case that one is overwhelming or you don't have all of the line items. And I put together a sample budget that you are welcome to check in on, review, and think through as well. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. If you should be able to download the budget template even if you do not have the Microsoft products on your computer already, or you can also open it in a Google Sheet instead. If you're having trouble, let us know. I also encourage you to come by one of our work sessions that's listed on the website, and we have some paper copies that you could fill out if computers are a struggle. So let's get started. We're going to start in the expenses, like I mentioned, because usually this is easier for us to figure out. So program personnel and admin. If you're an organization, this is likely your overhead. For instance, I'm on the payroll for City of Eugene. So any time used for me, if I was planning an event, would go in here. And this would be how much I cost as an employee. That might not be the case for you. In certain cases, not all of these are going to apply, and that's fine. You can leave certain areas blank if that's the case, or if this is a truly volunteer-run event. Artist fees. Are you hiring a band? Are you going to pay artists to do some type of a dance performance? That's what you're going to put in here. It's really important that if you have specific people in mind, you ask how much they would charge for an event like this so that you have an accurate amount to put into your budget. Supplies and materials. Let's see, this could be a lot of things. This could be, are you doing a craft project and you need to have some felt or some jewelry making supplies on hand? Those type of things. What do you need to make your event happen in that way? Permit fees. This could be a few different things. Are you closing down a street for your event or a sidewalk for your event? You'll need to get a permit for that. Anything that's in the public right of way that's being closed down. Do you have an exhibition going on, or you have a lot of organizations tabling? If you have 10 or more, that could trigger the fire marshal permit. If there's cooking on site, that could also be a fire marshal permit, or if you're having a very large event with more than 1,000 people, that could be a fire marshal event. There is a nice permit page through the City of Eugene website that you can check out to see if any of these events, the event that you're doing might need a permit. Production fees. This could be, are you having a concert? You would need to hire a sound person. Do you need a porta potty because you're in a park that doesn't have one? Things like that. The City of Eugene does require for events happening in the downtown footprint and as well as in the parks to have a $2 million, $3 million insurance policy. Now, usually organizations aren't carrying this regularly, but it is a requirement to have this level of insurance to host an event or an installation or occurrence on public property. So go ahead and go to the website. As you can see in some of the grant materials, there are links to the insurance website and a few examples of insurance companies you might get a quote from. And you can use your grant money to get this insurance, and it is a requirement. So please make sure you're including it in your budget if you don't already carry that level of insurance. Promotion and marketing. Are you going to be boosting social media posts? That requires some budget. Are you creating posters, sandwich boards? Are you getting those posters or handbills delivered? Are you putting ads in the Eugene Weekly? Are you doing radio ads? All of that will go in here. The next thing we're going to talk about is volunteer time. And this one's a little tricky on both ends. Basically, if you're having volunteers do it, you're saving yourself an expense, right? You do not have to pay for someone else to do it. So that is why volunteers are also included as an expense. Now you can see in this budget that we have the cash amount and the in-kind value. So cash is literally, I am going with my checkbook or my cash and I'm going to have to pay these people. In kind is where it's not a physical cash exchange. So for instance, if you are working with a local marketing firm or a radio station and you pay $500 in cash for marketing your event, and then they are also willing to do $500 worth of additional promotion for you, that would be $500 in the cash column and then $500 in the in-kind column. Since they're not actually giving you $500, they're just giving you the equal amount of radio time that would be considered what you could get for $500. Another thing to think about here is the volunteer time. $33.49 is the actual, I think, national rate that we're using. So go ahead and put every hour by the volunteer here and put that as your in-kind value. You'll note that once you get all of these things in here, it will autofill in these two columns and then add those together for your total project expenses. So this is actually how much we need to make this event happen. And if you do not have program expenses matching your revenue, do you have enough money to make your event happen? And if you have more money than you need for the expenses you're going to have, do you really need grant funding? So just think about those things when you're going through your budget. So as you're doing this, make sure you put your description down here so when the grant committee goes through, they know what you're thinking here. They know where these numbers are coming from, and they may say, that doesn't seem right, or, oh, okay, I see how they got there. So as I said, expenses need to match the revenue. So where's this revenue coming from? Here we have the grant request. So this is the easy one. This is how much you're asking us for. How do we get there though? Let's start thinking through all of your sources here. So business corporate sponsorship. Is Umpqua Bank going to give you some money? Put it in there. Is a local business going to donate some food for the event? Put it in there. That would be an in-kind value. Same concept applies for both revenue and expenses, where it can be in kind if people are not physically giving you cash. Foundation grants. Have you applied for another grant, maybe through the Oregon Arts Commission or another funding entity like that? That would be something you can include here. Applicant cash can mean how much you or your organization is actually going to be giving to the event. Program sales and fees. Are you charging an admission for your event or admission to a workshop? That's where you're going to put that in there. So whatever the entrance fee is times how many people you think are going to come. Volunteer time. We already talked about volunteer time and the expenses. Whatever you put down there needs to also be up here. they're going to be the same. And then personnel, admin, overhead, same goes for that. You could have some other sources that we didn't think of. That's why we have this other area as well. So if something else applies, put it in there. These are still going to auto calculate just like the other one, and you'll see what your total project revenue is. As mentioned, they got to match. That's how we know that the amount in your revenue matches, will cover what you need for the expenses of your event. One other thing that's really important is you must be able to match the revenue. You must bring in enough revenue to match the grant request you're making. So for instance, if you are asking the Downtown Program Fund or the Art in the Park Fund for $1,000, you need to bring $1,000 of matching funds to that. And that could be $1,000 in cash. That could be what you're bringing from your organization, a different sponsorship that you have already confirmed, something like that. You can also use volunteer time. So for instance, if this is an entirely volunteer-led event, you just need to make sure you have enough hours to hit that $1,000 match. So the $33.49 per hour times how many volunteers times how many hours are given. Or if you have donations and radio ads, things like that, that counts as in-kind value as well. So whatever match you have needs to be equal to the grant request. And these numbers will actually fill in to help you see things in this budget. So I'm going to click on the tab down here. Again, here's a blank budget in case not all of these items apply. Although you should really look at that first budget to make sure that you're thinking through your event thoroughly. I do want to share this example budget that I created. One other thing I didn't mention was secured and pending. You don't have to have all your ducks figured out yet. If you know you're going to be asking some sponsors and you think that you got a pretty good shot, but you haven't gotten that yes yet, you can put pending. Secured means that you've asked them and they have said yes, and you know that that is going to happen. So that's one other thing in the revenue section to keep in mind. So here in this example, you can see I've added in some information based on the event that I'm holding, the fictional event that I'm holding, and you can see that the total project revenue equals the total project expenses. You can also see that my in-kind and my cash match as well. $38.10 for cash, $1691.68 for in-kind. And that makes sense because you can't turn in-kind things into cash to pay for things that cost money. So just think of it that way. You'll also see that based on this calculation, my total grant request is $2,500. And my total match, which this automatically calculates again, is $3,001.68. So I have enough money to make that match happen. So again, here's just an example of things I put together for you to think through. A few other things to note. For supplies and materials, we do have, if you are granted, some supplies that you can borrow from City of Eugene Cultural Services. Now, how the heck do you know how much those are worth? Go to a local rental agency, maybe Destination Events, maybe Parties Downtown, maybe another entity that rents out equipment, and get some quotes to see how much that likely costs. So if you're borrowing it from us, that's going to be an in-kind value. If you need to rent something like a stage, which is something we do not have on stock, that would be a cash amount because you're actually going to need to be paying for that expense. So that is what to know about the budget. Make sure you save it and attach it to your grant. Any grants that are submitted without a budget will be disqualified. If this tool doesn't work for you, please contact us and we will try to make arrangements so that you have a tool that you can use that still gets the information in your budget across to the scoring committee. Thanks for listening.